Happy game day, everybody. Welcome into it. This is GameQuest, a Volquest.com football game day podcast. I'm Eric Cain, and today, it's not Grant Ramey getting a little bit of a promotion here. Brent Hubbs is joining the show, and we're going to get you set for Tennessee and Ohio State in the college football playoffs. The show is always presented by our great friends. Really enjoyed the partnership with them this football season. Premier Garage of Knoxville.com. Go to premiergarageknoxville.com/Vols. premiergarageknoxville.com/Vols. Check out the Smokey Grey hybrid polymer floors today. That is premiergarageknoxville.com/Vols. Brent Hubbs, man, we've been talking about this for what feels like a month, right? It's not been quite a month, but finally, it's about go time. Tennessee and Ohio State, first ever expanded 12-team college football playoff, a playoff game in a home venue, that being for the Buckeyes. It is here. What a moment for this Tennessee football program.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you're trying to get to. I mean, this is what everybody's looking for. Tennessee, kind of scratched that itch a little bit in 22, and obviously it didn't work out. That was a 14 playoff. Now we're in the 12, and when you go and set out in January and you get started, this is what your goal is. This is where you're trying to get to, and this is where this team has gotten themselves to. Now you got to go play your best football against a quality opponent, and there's no better feeling than being in one of the most meaningful games in the month of December and trying to go on a run here. It's a different feeling. I mean, I think it's all going to be kind of bizarre on, later today when you sit there and you realize, okay, they could play 3 more weeks. They could play 1 more week, or in a few hours, this thing could be over, which is a very different feeling for the conclusion of a season. But that's part of the playoff life, and that's what Tennessee's been trying to get to. And shout out to Josh Heupel and his team for getting into this point.
Very much a Gibbs Eagle flair to the show today, because I live out towards the Corrington area right now, zone for Gibbs. We know Brent Hubbs is from the area. VFL Ollie Lane is going to join us here in about 10-15 minutes to give us his perspective heading into this matchup. So going to be a really, really good show coming up.
He knows a lot more than I know, by the way. He knows a lot more about football than I do. That's for sure.
Yeah, a lot more than you and I both combined. So, yeah, looking forward to listening to him. I did a show about this a couple of weeks ago. It was after the Selection Sunday, and I think you might have wrote a column on this. You don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but, man, let's just go back to January of 2021. I mean, where this program was, and close your eyes and then open them, and now you're about to play in the college football playoff. I mean, the turnaround from Heupel, we've documented it. I mean, it's been pretty incredible. But with all the players leaving for the transfer portal, with the sanctions that were looming for allegations and recruiting against your program, you were the laughingstock of college football. You were once again not only hiring a head coach, you were hiring a new athletics director. It's pretty incredible that was not that long ago. And here you are playing for a national champion, or chance for a national championship. It's pretty surreal when you kind of put it in that context.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from Josh Heupel's achievements or that press conference and the hiring of Danny White. I mean, for me, that moment in time is always going to be about that press conference that Chancellor Plowman had, and I walked out of that press conference going, man, we're just now starting to see dark days. Like, this is. I mean, she came out and was very transparent about how many violations they committed and, how many transgressions. And she was sort of falling on the sword there. And you're like, man, this is not good. You just served it up to the Committee on Infractions is what it felt like. And I came out of that, and I've told her this personally. I came out of that press conference going, what are you doing? Like, This is like, nothing about this is good or makes sense. But she knew what she was doing, and it was the right move to clean house and to get restarted. And she's been the catalyst that has led the way, and obviously hired Danny White, and Danny White hires Josh Heupel. And not a lot of people were elated about that hire at first, but it's turned out to be obviously a terrific move that has brought Tennessee a ton of success. But for me, the starting point was the closure point of Donde Powellman's press conference that day, because that tells me how far Tennessee has really come, because I walked out of that deal on the North Studios at the Neyland Thompson Sports Complex going, man, this thing is a long ways from getting to where it's supposed to be. And here you are. I mean, you got 2 10-win seasons in the last 3 years, and now you're in the college football playoff.
Yeah, and it feels like it was forever ago, but really, in the grand scheme of things, it was just a couple of years ago. And, of course, Josh Heupel's come in. He's had staff continuity. Hendon Hooker was here, and that accelerated everything, and Jeremy Pruitt brought him in. And, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that if you have the right quarterback, it does do just that. And recruited well, and here you are. And he's evolved as a head coach, and this year it's been more about defense, and it's always about running the football, but you have an All-American tailback this year. And I think those things kind of come in full circle here when we transition into Ohio State, Brent. It's an easy talking point, but it is a talking point. I think run game and defense travels. Defense didn't travel to Athens, Georgia a couple weeks ago. I recognize that. But in a game where you're going to be in a hostile environment, everything's on the line. I don't think Nico's going to be rattled because he wasn't rattled in Georgia in that environment a month ago. But the best thing that you do as a program right now is play defense and run the football. And I think both of those things travel, and we've seen it in action all season long. I think that's going to have Tennessee in this football game, obviously, and give Tennessee a chance to win this football game.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I think Tennessee, in a lot of ways, is built for a playoff team because of what you're talking about. They can score, they can make explosive plays, but they're not going into games where they're trying to outscore everybody. The fascinating thing about this matchup is both of these defenses have given up more than 20 points exactly one time this season. Ohio State did it in a loss to Oregon, and Tennessee obviously did it in a loss to Georgia. Other than that, the defense has carried the day for both programs. Both programs want the defense to carry the day tonight in this setting. And I think it's going to come down to who can make a play. Who's going to make that pivotal fourth quarter, third down conversion to move the chains or to get you into, a situation where you can win on a game-winning drive, because I think it's going to be a close football game. But if you can't run the football tonight, then I think it's going to be a long night for Tennessee. Tennessee's got to be able to do what they've done all year long, and that's run the football. Their lowest output this year is 143 yards against Florida, and Tennessee has got to be able to run it. They've got to be able to run it consistently and stay out of third and long situations as much as they can.
We know about the offensive line injuries, and they're big ones, right? I mean, you got we'll see if he's still first round, but a projected first round left tackle who's been out for about 6 games now. That's not new news, but he's a starting NFL caliber lineman that's going to be out for Ohio State. Your Remington Award winner over Cooper Mays at Tennessee has been out the last 2 games, and that's Seth McLaughlin. That's not news. We'll get into the individual matchups, who's going to play guard. I mean, that offensive line feels like a train wreck right now for Ohio State, but that's kind of where the injury conversation is for the Buckeyes. For Tennessee, Brent, it's been a wide receiver, and there's been some transition in the transfer portal. Caleb Webb, Nathan Laycock, Chaz Nimrod, Edwin Spillman, not with the team anymore, but Thornton didn't finish the game against Vanderbilt. Brew didn't play the game against Vanderbilt. Squirrel left with his arm in a sling. Where's Tennessee at wide receiver health-wise entering this matchup, to the best of your knowledge? And anything else? I mean, knock on wood, for the most part for this Tennessee football team, I mean, all year long, it's been pretty healthy.
It has been. And obviously, no offense to Nate Spillman and Nathan Laycock. Those 2 guys were not real factors, or not a factor at all.
No.
Chaz Nimrod played some, had a role, but only 10 catches. I think the question is what happens if Squirrel White can't finish? What do you do at the slot? I think that's the biggest mystery and the biggest unknown. I think Mike Matthews is going to be in the rotation and will play out there. I think Brew McCoy is going to be okay with the hamstring. Dante Thornton has just had a hard time staying healthy. I think he's going to be able to go. Does he make it the whole game? I mean, we'll have to see, how that goes. But I think the biggest question is what do they do at the slot position? Because I don't think Squirrel White's going to play, every snap of offense. So how do you do that? 12 personnel, but then do you have a wrinkle in there where an Ethan Davis is flexed out and he becomes essentially the slot receiver? Is there a way where you slide Brew inside and Mike Matthews is outside at wide receiver and Brew's playing the slot? Could you move Brazel in there for a few things? I mean, where's your creativity? And then I know Josh Heupel joked there'd be no wrinkles and all those types of things, but where is all right, we've had 3 weeks here, 2+ weeks to get ready to sort of mask any problem that we might have with scheme and with personnel. How do we do that? And I think that's going to be intriguing to watch. The same way I'm going to be intrigued by Ohio State's offensive line. This will be the 3rd straight game these 5 guys have started together. How much better are they after a couple of weeks off? Those are the unknowns when you have a break like you've had between games. How healthy do you get? How much better does a group or does the chemistry get with a group, as is the case with Ohio State's offensive line?
Yeah, and is it going to be those?
Right.
Is it going to be those five? I mean, Ryan Day said on Monday, man, it was almost like he's thinking he's going to rotate a guard this week, which is kind of like head scratching. So anyway, we'll see. We'll get into individual matchups, all that and more coming up next here on GameQuest, or coming up in a little bit on GameQuest. Coming up next here on the show, presented by our friends over at Premier Garage of Knoxville, is Ollie Lane, Vol for Life. I want to ask him about playing, of course, in road environments, his thoughts on the matchup, Tennessee and Ohio State, playing in cold weather, all that and more. He knows it better than Brent and I know it. We'll welcome on Ollie Lane to the show here in just a second. Hey, I want to give a big-time shout-out to our presenting sponsor of GameQuest, and it's been the presenting sponsor all season long here this fall, and that is Premier Garage of Knoxville. Garage guys or gals who bleed orange, do you use your garage as some sort of man cave, potentially? Watching football throughout the fall and into the winter, maybe even trying to get a quick escape from the family. Well, if you're like me, I like to start every football Saturday in my garage, watching College Game Day, or even the start of that new game time on the SEC Network. It's your place. It's a place to kick back and maybe have a few cold ones, potentially. Escape from it all. So here's a question for you. What's the best complement to your garage, your sanctuary of sorts? Then Premier Garage of Knoxville's custom Smokey Grey hybrid polymer floor. Premier Garage of Knoxville, East Tennessee's leading provider in custom garage flooring, cabinetry, and storing solution. The company uses employees as opposed to subcontractors to ensure that you receive consistent craftsmanship and personalized attention. So what is that Smokey Grey hybrid polymer floor? Well, if you're watching on YouTube right now, I'm going to share my screen and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. You go to premiergarageknoxville.com/falls right up here, premiergarageknoxville.com/falls. You'll have a landing page right here. You can have the phone number right here. You've got all the different stuff they have on their website, pictures, cabinetry, garage, all that and more. But basically, you put your name, email, phone number, zip code, and you can get a free in-home consultation at premiergarageknoxville.com. See the background right here, that speckled Smokey Grey, and see this. Just gorgeous. I mean, be the best Tennessee fan you can be this fall by having this Smokey Grey polymer hybrid floor at premiergarageknoxville.com. It's gorgeous. It looks fantastic, and it can look fantastic in your garage as well. So, again, that is the Smokey Grey hybrid polymer floor today, and encourage you guys to check it on out at premiergarageknoxville.com/fall. 15 plus years in business, locally owned and operated, thousands of satisfied customers. Again, you can schedule a free in-home consultation by visiting premiergarageknoxville.com/falls. The Vols sported those Smokey Greys in week one, looked pretty darn good doing it, so why not flake your garage floor with the same Tennessee Smokey Grey hybrid polymer floor? Check it all out today. That is at premiergarageknoxville.com/falls. That is premiergarageknoxville.com/falls. So big thanks to them, and as always, I want to give big thanks to Prize Picks here and give a shout out to them as we do on each and every single game quest here throughout the season. Prize Picks, it's the biggest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Easiest, most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including many pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. It's as simple as that. You can do college football, NFL, college basketball, NBA, soccer, baseball, cricket, whatever sport there is. They've got tons of options over there at PrizePicks.com, and you fill up a player grid. You have to have at least 2, no more than 6. They're going to give you a stat, and all you do again, you pick more than or less than, and you can watch the winnings roll in. And right now over at PrizePicks.com, you play $5, you're going to get $50 instantly if you put in that promo code VQ. Play $5, get $50 instantly if you put in that promo code VQ. Promo code VQ, when you play you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 in lineup. So that's at PrizePicks.com/VQ. Again, PrizePicks.com/VQ. Put in the promo code VQ to receive guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineup. All that and more is at PrizePicks.com. Want to welcome back onto the show Ollie Lane, former Tennessee offensive lineman and a veteran in the system, a veteran in college football, and a guy that can break down or preview this matchup probably better than Brent and I could. Ollie, Thanks for joining us, man. First time we talked since I guess the matchup has been announced. It's been a couple of weeks, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Your overall thoughts on this matchup, kind of when you heard about it, and then now it's game day. Tennessee, Ohio State. Kind of your overall thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I still feel a little resentment, I guess, towards this playoff committee and how they decided things. I think at the end of the day, when you have a team that lost to their last game, I understand it's the rival to Michigan. It's a 6-6 team that still lost to. Our worst loss was all the way back in September. I don't know where they value it. And obviously, Ohio State being ranked second all season helps that out. But I really thought we made a good case to have a host spot for the playoff game. But, I like the mentality that Heupel and them have talked about in all the press conferences after that. Anytime, any place, anywhere, we're going to go, we're going to play. And this is the mentality you got to have in the playoffs. One thing that shoots at me when I look at the matchup, it's the hardest path to get the championship game by anybody. I mean, congrats to Oregon for being number one and undefeated. You've got the hardest way to get there. Yeah. But looking at Tennessee and Ohio State head-to-head, talent-wise, it's a really good matchup. For years, everybody would probably still got the stigma that Ohio State's Ohio State, the Urban Meyer Ohio State's. It's not that same Ohio State anymore. Everybody was talking about the strength of the Big Ten. They're one of the Power Four conferences. It's different than the SEC, and I think everybody can see that in parallels with everything. I look forward to the matchup. It's gonna be cold, but we play in cold weather. There's been many times in Lexington that I've been freezing in late November. So it's not something that there's gonna be, I think, affecting the game. I think the big thing here is just to see how we can handle a road trip, because this is a different road trip. It's out of the SEC road trip, and sometimes we do better on those road trips. I think back to when we went to Pittsburgh, was it 2022, and played really well on the road against a good team. So, there's different fan aspects that go in between these different conferences, because, SEC fans are probably a little bit more rowdy, I'd imagine, than our fans up north. So, it'll be a fun environment for them to see. I love on Twitter, everybody's already got the goalpost path lines, checker the shoe. I love the fan engagement into this, because that's a big challenge for these fans, especially going into this playoff system. It's a lot of games and a lot of traveling. And we've always traveled well, and it's a challenge to see these fans be able to still do this, because we thrive off of our fans and thrive off the energy that they give us. And when they get fired up for a game, it's hard to not get fired up the same way.
Yeah. Number of things I want to hit on with you over the next 15 minutes or so, but even before you were starting on this offensive line, I remember seeing your parents, back in 20, I guess wouldn't have been 2020, but 21 and all that. Your parents went to every single game, and Tennessee fans travel so well. And the playoff, there's certainly a case for Tennessee to be hosting. You have and that's the thing we just kind of have to figure out. And the committee chairs are always going to be turning over, but you have Ohio State that lost. It's a rivalry game, but to a really bad Michigan team when you were favored by 21 points, and you don't drop, losing at home, and you don't drop as far as Miami losing to a good Syracuse team on the road that finished 9-3. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But something you said about Heupel, man, and Butch Jones recruited you. You played for Pruitt, and then of course you played for Heupel. I'm not trying to put the other coaches on blast here, but for Heupel, he was a quarterback. He was a national championship winner. He was a Heisman runner-up. Again, he was a quarterback. He's got a competitive nature about him. Anytime, anywhere, any place. Playing for a guy like that, does that just kind of fuel you as a player? Because I gotta feel like, of course, you want to play hard for whoever your head coach is, but having that mindset, it's like he's in the trenches with you.
Oh, most definitely. He always preaches the competitive nature, because he is a very competitive man. I played pool with this guy, and I'm not a great pool player, and he just goes all out to try to beat me. And that's something that you take as a player. You're like, wow, this guy's competitive in everything he does, and it feeds into the program. And you love a coach that gets riled up, gets fired up behind you and stuff like that, because you got more trust and belief in them to want to go out and do those extra efforts and make those big time plays and stuff like that. And you got the confidence behind you of someone backing you. I can remember in past, like for the first little bit, a lot of us played just to the fear of not getting reamed after the end of the play by doing something bad. What Heupel didn't do a good job was they understand mistakes are going to happen. They obviously want us to play perfect every single snap. And, you want to. That's what you strive for. It's not going to be perfect every single snap of the game. And they understand that every time you go to the sidelines, good drive, bad drive, it's the same energy, same mentality from the entire coaching staff. And that's something that goes a long way. I mean, you see some of these coaches just have huge, dramatic blow-ups on the sidelines after big plays and stuff like that. You don't see that a lot from this staff. And that speaks a lot to these players because, I mean, you're already on high stress when you're playing. And you know as a player when you've made a mistake and messed up, and all 102,000 people that are watching you also know. So it's nice to get to the sideline and you're not also hearing it from the coaching staff as well. They just, all right, let's break it down. This is what happened. Let's go out and just execute the next time. They truly embody the full snap and clear mentality. It's like, we're going to talk about it, but at the same time, we got to move on to the next series because this series is now over. Take the information what you can and then build from it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a time and a place. I mean, certainly I didn't play in the SEC level, and I'm not a coach, so but on the sideline, it's like, okay, it happened. You got to move on to make sure it doesn't happen again. On Monday when you're watching film, that's when you can get reamed out a little bit. But here in the now, you just got to move on. National media is making this a conversation. I continue to say that it's overblown, yet I continue to bring it up. So I'm going to ask you. You mentioned those cold weather games in Lexington in late November. What's the coldest weather game you played in, and what are some challenges? Because it's going to be cold. But Ohio State recruits the Southeastern Conference. It's not like Tennessee plays in South Beach. I mean, it's going to be cold on both sides. What are some of the challenges to playing in a cold weather football game?
Yeah, I mean, the first big thing is just getting warmed up. You got to get your body warmed up. And, I mean, part of that's in the locker room, doing extra stretches, kind of getting the sweat build up, and especially in your warm-up routine once you go out there in pads, build that sweat up. Because, I mean, honestly, for me, the best thing to happen is once I get my helmet all sweaty, which sounds disgusting, it stays pretty warm. And so, you find those things. You find times when you're able to get into a heater or sit on the heated bench for a little bit, get that warmth. But most of it, it's a mentality. Everybody always says it's a mentality, but it's really a mentality to just ignore the weather and focus on what you can control. Everybody talks about control the controllables. Well, I don't know if anybody can control the weather. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just you got to choose. I'm not going to let it affect me. It's the same with the heat. Honestly, playing in the heat's a lot harder to me than playing in the cold. The only thing that's tough about playing in the cold to me is breathing in heavy and cold air always affects my lungs, and I'm sure a lot of people feel that way too. But once you get that good initial sweat buildup, the weather's the last thing you're worried about. I mean, that first hit or two might hurt a little bit more than it normally does, but especially up front with you constant contact and coming in contact with people, you get pretty warmed up pretty fast. It's got to be a little bit more difficult. I can't speak from personal experience, but it's got to be a little bit more difficult for your skill positions that aren't necessarily out there immediately all the time. But they do. You just got to be smart with how you're keeping yourself warm on the sidelines. Don't let yourself get cold. If it's a long drive, make sure you get up off of the heated bench and get your joints warm back up. Because, I mean, yeah, you're on the heated bench, but your joints are going to get frozen up. You get a little cold. Next time you try to get your stance, it's going to take a little bit longer to get down into it. But like you said, it's been talked about. I don't think it's going to play as big of a factor because the fact is everybody's going to have to deal with the cold. It's not like Ohio State, some special cold experts, and they know how to handle it better than anybody else. I mean, I think people have been trying to figure out how to stay warm through the winter for the entire existence. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think if it plays a factor, it's not going to be a very big factor.
Two other things on this cold weather. Number one, why do offensive linemen never wear sleeves? It's a mentality thing you talked about. Number two, though, more importantly, you practice at center your entire career at Tennessee. Played a little bit. I don't know if you ever played. I can't remember if you ever snapped the football in cold weather, but the football, describe the football in cold weather. I mean, it's hard. And so for a center and a quarterback exchange, but also for a quarterback throwing it, for a receiver receiving it, you get used to it, I'm sure, but like the ball feels different in cold weather, correct?
Yeah. It gets more dense. Honestly, your grip starts to fade a little bit because especially as a center, you're not wearing a glove. I never wore a glove on my snap hand because I couldn't get the grip right with a glove. So, I mean, your hand's already cold. When your fingers and stuff get cold, they don't grip as well, move as well. And so, I mean, it's just some stuff you got to work through. A lot of guys that I've seen do in the past is they'll do the tape around their fingers. It helps with the grip. But especially for the quarterbacks, probably got the hardest, but especially if you got a center that snaps it hard. I mean, that ball is coming faster. And I mean, with it being more dense and cold when it gets there, it hurts the hands a little bit more. And especially for receivers, if that quarterback's just ripping that thing out there, it feels a little different on your hands. But then going back to what you said first, talking about offensive linemen not wearing long sleeves, I think it's the Iron Man athlete kind of tribute. You've seen more offensive linemen go to the leg sleeves and stuff like that. And, I was an iron athlete when I played high school. As I got older, I was like, I'm going to keep myself warm. I threw on the sleeves and stuff. But it's a mentality kind of, it's a strength. It's a manly men strength kind of thing. It's just like, I don't let the cold affect me. It's the same people that say, oh yeah, I wear shorts during the winter. That's cool. I'm not wearing shorts.
It reminds me of that Campbell's soup commercials, Don McNabb and the Eagles offensive lineman. It's that type of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Tennessee and Ohio State, man, what do you like in so many areas of this game? And feel free to mention whatever you think. I just think it's good on good. I think it's two pretty similar football teams. I'm intrigued to see Tennessee's defensive line against a banged up offensive line for Ohio State. That's a real storyline. Also on the flip side, there are 3 to probably 4 NFL wide receivers. This is the best cast and characters of skill players Tennessee will have faced defensively for sure. There's about 3 or 4 wide receivers who will be playing on Sundays. Going up against Tennessee's pretty stout defensive backs and cornerbacks especially. I'm intrigued to see how that looks like. But what key matchups and storylines in this game from your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's going to be a very big defensive battle for sure. Both defenses are very stout. I think the challenge for our defense, like you alluded to, is just being able to contain the amount of talent and speed threats that they have on the perimeter. Will Howard's a good put-together quarterback. He's had some struggles this year, but, he's gotten better throughout the season. Their skill players continue to excel at a high level. I think it's, the big question going throughout this entire season is, when's our backs going to get tested? When's our D-backs going to get tested? And they've been tested, and they've done really well and showed up to the occasion on multiple times. And so I'm not necessarily concerned about their ability to defend. But with it being a high intense pressure game, it'll be interesting to see how they respond when they get put into tough positions, because there's going to be some adversity that strikes. You're going to get down at some point in this game, and it's just how are you going to be able to crawl yourself back out. Offensively, I want to see us continue to build off what we left in the regular season. I feel like we're continuing to be back to a little bit more of an explosive offense that we had in seasons past. Obviously, with the hardware that some of these guys on offense, like Dylan Sampson and Cooper Mays, have brought home, speaks a lot for what they've been able to accomplish. And everybody's not been pleased with how the offense has played this year. But to still have some guys highlighted on it is really huge. I think the big thing for us is just being able to really and truly establish a run game up there, because that's what separates us from a lot of our opponents is our ability to run the football. And if we can get Dylan Sampson and co to start really hitting it hard and make it a impact, because the SEC run game is completely different from a Big Ten run game. It's a lot more physical, more smash mouth in your face. And I think if we can bring that trait into it, I don't know how much they're really going to want to hang around it. Because when you look at Big Ten offense or defensive linemen, they're more, I want to rush the passer, do skill moves, moving around. They're lighter type bodies compared to your SEC type defensive line. They're big, thick men that hold gaps and stop the run. So there's more of a less emphasis for them on stop the run and getting after the passer. So I think that's something we could be able to really take advantage of and really press in that run game.
I think another storyline to watch in this game is red zone. Who performs well in the red zone? Of the 12 playoff teams, Ohio State, I believe, has the number 1 ranked defensive red zone in terms of keeping teams out of the end zone and the touchdown percentage. Tennessee's at number 2. Offensively, Ohio State is, I believe, ranked number 1 of all playoff teams in red zone touchdown efficiency, whereas Tennessee, and again, this has been the last couple of years, finishing the right way. I think Tennessee's like 10th out of 12 or something. Outside of the windows are tighter, a condensed space. I understand that. Offensively, what makes the red zone so challenging? And obviously you want to get points, but you really need, in a game like this, you need to punch it in. What makes the red zone so challenging on the offensive side?
I feel like one thing that gets a lot of people in trouble is once you get in that red zone, your eyes are locked on the end zone. You're looking for the touchdown every single time, and you're trying to put together schemes. Like you said, it's a tight window, not a lot of space to operate. And so, it's harder for wide receivers to get open. And when you get in a position when you have to throw, I mean, that's when you really need someone back there that can pocket, like precision pass, get it in the right spot. Nico's done a better job at that. But, I mean, that's a hard trait for any quarterback to have across the country. But, I think the biggest thing, especially in a game like this, is making the extra efforts, getting the extra hand on a block to keep them out of the play, making sure everybody's keyed into what is going on at every play. Because, I mean, it just takes one mess up, especially in the red zone. One mess up will highlight so big in the red zone because it could ruin the entire play. I mean, you've looked everybody we talked about it forever, but in 21 against Pitt, we had the mishap on the first red zone trip. We thought we fixed it, didn't fix it. The one guy messed up again, and it costed us the game. And, I mean, that's just small details that you look at in the red zone because everything gets more minute in the details as you get closer to that end zone. You got less space to work with, less calls to go to on your play sheet, and just finding out what works best against the defense you're going against. Is it going to be a game where I can pound it in for a couple yards into the end zone, or is it going to be a game where I got to find some tunnel screen or some quick out to get them in? But, I mean, it varies, and it's just, like I said, it's difficult. The details get more and more increasingly important as you inch closer to that goal line.
One of the big talking points the last couple of weeks, now that we've know this matchup's been said, Tennessee and Ohio State, has been the injuries to Ohio State on the offensive line. Seth McLaughlin, fantastic player. We knew he came from Alabama, 9 games, Remington Award winner. Should he have won? Should Cooper have won? But good player regardless. He's out. Yeah. First to second round draft pick at left tackle has been out for a little while. So those are two big hogs missing. Pro Football Focus, and I'm sure as a player, y'all just hated that, but it's certainly not everything. The grades, I think, are just silly because you don't know what they're supposed to be doing. You don't know their responsibilities.
Yeah.
But I do like to look at Pro Football Focus in terms of snap counts, in terms of pressures allowed and sacks allowed and stuff like that. Ohio State has started 4 different left guards this year. To their second center, obviously. Their right guard has started every game, but he's allowed a lot of pressure. He's one of the weaker links, I guess. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I mean, it's the playoffs. And Ryan Day earlier this week said he was asked about a backup guard, and he said, "Oh yeah, he'll be rotating in. He'll be playing some. Like we're gonna have a rotation of guard." And I know, Tennessee with right tackle does that a little bit, and you guys have done that in the past. Yeah. But how difficult is that there's a lot of moving parts on that offensive line, but it's like do or die now. Like it's like you got to go. You'd like for that to be finalized a little bit, but how difficult or how behind the sticks essentially is Ohio State playing on the offensive line right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely behind when you're having to get to a spot where you rotate. You don't have a solid, confident 5 that you want to put out there every time. I've talked about it before on different spots, but as an offensive line, you build chemistry playing with those guys over and over again. And, I mean, when you get to, like, that 5 that really, truly take up and assume most of the snap count, those guys become a lot closer than they do with the other guys on the team. And it's not saying that there's something different about it, but they're out there in the trenches battling every single time. They see everything. When you go to the sidelines, you're able to talk completely down the line because everybody's at least seeing like, oh, I've had this guy on this play. You had him on the other play. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? There's more open communication going across because everybody's seeing it all in real time at the same time and able to dissect it a little bit. It's something that I struggled with when I would rotate in as the rotating offensive lineman. You're trying to gather as much information as you can before you go in the game from those guys, and it's not always completely accurate because everybody sees something a little bit differently. But once you get in there and kind of get a sense of what they were talking about, then you put it in your own terms. And so it takes a little bit because, I mean, for me, it was always I had to get the first 1 or 2 hits in to feel comfortable. And when you're getting your 1 or 2 first hits in late in the first, late or middle second, you feel like that guy's already a whole quarter or something ahead of you. And so it takes a while to get into that flow. And then it's the same thing that I just spoke about. It's just the chemistry that goes with having the same 5 out there every single time. It truly does mean a lot. And, I mean, when you got guys that rotate in and out, then you've got the guys that have been there stable all year. Well, if they start having issues on the offensive line, they're looking directly at those guys. And the pressure just continues to build and ample up. And especially in a high-pressure game like live or die playoff situation, that pressure is going to be put on them, and you're going to be hard pressed to say something if something's not working more than they would if it's a guy that they know has been in that spot all year. If they're struggling, it'll be more of like a, hey, come on, let's get your stuff together. if this is the new rotating guy out there, be like, this guy's terrible. We got to get him out of here and put someone else in. So, I mean, the mindset changes.
All right, man. Tennessee, Ohio State. Tennessee's a 7.5-point dog. I think the total is pretty low at 46.5. Tennessee's a popular pick in this game when you ask around a little bit. How do you see this game happening? And if you have a final score prediction, well, let's hear it.
I feel like it's going to be a really hard-fought game back and forth. I feel like it might even get to a point where it's whoever's got the ball last is going to end up winning this game. I haven't really thought much of a score. Pinpoint it maybe 20 or 31, 28 Tennessee. I think we do pull out on top. I think we're strong-willed and want this opportunity. We wanted this opportunity back in 22, and I think part of this is I say it for my own benefit. I want it to be a revenge tour of what we should have had 22. But I think it's a strong program-building win for this team to get not only in their first race for a championship since 98, to truly take us to that next national stage level.
Ollie, great stuff, man. Looking forward to seeing how this game turns out, and hopefully we'll talk to you again next week at some point over Christmas, getting ready for the Rose Bowl, man.
Yes, sir. Sounds great. I appreciate you having me on.
Boy, it's just about time. It feels like it has been an eternity, and then it was game week a couple days ago, and now it is game day. Tennessee, Ohio State, 8 o'clock, college football playoff in the shoe. I can't wait to see exactly how much orange is in this stadium, and I think it was Austin said earlier this week, it's going to be cold, so maybe we won't see as much orange because of some jackets, but noise level, we'll be able to tell a difference for sure. So I'm excited about this one. Brent, we've reached the part of the program where we're going to say goodbye here in a moment, but key storylines in this game, we've talked about it ad nauseum in the last couple of weeks, but I'll tee it up for you. For Tennessee, one of the key points in this game, and this is football 101, you got to affect the passer. You got to get after the passer. The struggles, the inconsistency of the offensive line due to injuries, from guard, center, guard, it is not very good. Your right tackle's been pretty good, and your backup left tackle, who's played half the season, has been all right for Ohio State. But guard, center, guard has not been good the last couple of weeks because of some injuries. Tennessee has got to get after the passer, whether it's twists, loops, turns, Pierce, Josephs, Omar Norman Lott in the interior, Amari Thomas, whoever, affect the passer, because at Georgia, you did not affect the passer, and Carson Beck just tore you apart. And it was a huge reason Tennessee lost this game. Tennessee's got to get some pressure, accelerate that clock. I think that's a key to this game. Tennessee's defensive line and front seven against a battered and bruised and not confident in a lot of areas offensive line for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, and I think to do that, you got to win early downs, and you got to get Ohio State into some obvious, vertical or downfield passing situations. I'm going to be curious to see how Ohio State kind of masks the offensive line in early downs. Is it jet sweeps? Do they do some stuff to try to get on the edge and not run right into the teeth of Tennessee's defense? But when it comes time to pressure, I think you got to get some things in Howard's face, and squeeze the pocket down a little bit. I think it's imperative that you don't freelance, and get out of your rush lanes and do some things, because his feet are good enough to get himself out of trouble.
Yeah.
And so I think that you've got to be smart and all that. But yeah, you've got to make him uncomfortable, and you can't let him get into a rhythm back there. And Tennessee did a good job of that to start the game against Carson Beck. And then they gave up the one jump off sides. Everybody kind of quits playing. They give up that 26 or 27-yard pass. And then all of a sudden, from that point on, Georgia was in complete rhythm. Now, I thought it was interesting. Tate Ratledge said, hey, we knew what they were tipping their hand a little bit. Tennessee wasn't what they're doing. What's your self-scout? Have you cleaned that stuff up? There's a lot of different variables there, but Tennessee has to get pressure on Howard defensively if they're going to stymie this Ohio State Buckeye offense the way a good number of teams have this year.
Tennessee defensive line against Ohio State offensive line, Ohio State wide receivers against Tennessee secondary. I think we can all agree we like Tennessee secondary a lot better than in years past. Tennessee's defense, top 10 defense. You've got two corners that you really feel good about. Safeties have been better, but not the superstars of this defense. You got a young athletic playmaker in Boo Carter in the nickelback spot, but he's still a young playmaker. You got Carnell Tate, you got Ibuka, you've got Jeremiah Smith, you've got Brandon Inus. I mean, NFL players galore, and I know people are tired of hearing me say that, but I mean, it just is what it is. They've got wide receivers who are going to be playing on Sundays. So, again, I think it's about winning early downs. I know you're about to say that, but Tennessee defensively, Tim Banks. How do you help out your secondary? How do you help out a corner? What do you do to try to limit the aerial attack of what those guys, the weapons on the outside, can do for the Buckeyes?
Well, let's just call it what it is. This is the best core playmakers Tennessee's played all year long, and it's not close. I think the one interesting matchup that I'm curious to see is over the middle of the football field, and it's Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate was targeted 10 times against Michigan. That's where they were going with the football. Michigan did a pretty good job on the outside, but Ohio State tried to go with Carnell Tate and a lot of underneath stuff with some targets. One would imagine that they're going to try to work the middle of the field with Tate against Tennessee. How does Boo Carter match up with Carnell Tate? What is Tim Banks' answer there? How do you handle the linebacker situation with Spillman in there? How do you protect him? What do you do? I think that second level middle of the football field with Carnell Tate's a really interesting matchup. And I don't want to take anything away from Smith or the other guys out there. If I'm Ohio State, I'm not saying it's a wash, but I'm like, do I really want to go at Jermod McCoy a whole lot, right? Or do I want to try to work more in the middle of the football field and see what that looks like and see what I can get done there with Carnell Tate? Tennessee did a great job against Concepcion early in the year at NC State, but a lot of that was due to pressure. I think you've got to clutter it up into Howard's face, and then you're going to have to really rally to the football and play in space if you're Tennessee over the middle, because I think that's where Chip Kelly in the passing game is going to try to go early in this game tonight.
Yeah, as they should, in my opinion, and you got to be mixing things up. I think in the nature of it, you got to be aggressive, and we talked about that, getting pressure on Will Howard and forcing him into bad decisions. As far as the over the middle stuff, middle of the field, yeah, Tennessee linebackers, man, like I think this is one of those games where, like in the first quarter, maybe first couple of drives, if you're running that underneath stuff and that mesh, because what you're doing is you're getting a linebacker's eyes or maybe even a safety's eyes to try to bite on that underneath stuff. And then they're going to bring something right behind you, whether it be a dig, whether it be a post, whatever. And so you got to carry your guy out of your zone and then sink and find the other guy. If I'm a linebacker, maybe to set the tone, and maybe this is just old school football, and I'm wanting to get out there and play the glory days, Uncle Rico style. Carnell Tate's running across the middle, or whoever. You got linebacker, go and take you a pass interference, lay that sucker out, right? Set the tone, like say, okay, we might not be athletically enough to defend you, but you come in the box here, you better be head on a swivel, and anything that can knock the route off, right? The timing of the route. You gotta get hands on the guys anyway. But I'm saying early in the game, maybe knock a guy out a little bit, take that flag and say, okay, now let's go and let's see what happens. But that's just me. Running the football. Ohio State's going to try to run the football. They got two really good tailbacks. Tennessee's got one of the better backs in the country in Dylan Sampson. Football 101, Tennessee needs to run the football, be effective there, build off it with play action pass. This offensive line, though, has been shaky at times this year in pass pro. It's been pretty solid running the football, and a cold night when the ball is going to be very, very hard and cold, Dylan Sampson has got to have a big day. And it's a good thing that he's feeling as good as he's felt in quite some time because, again, Tennessee hadn't played in 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think they have to be able to do what they've done, and that's run the football. How does Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, how does he play the numbers game? Does he feel like they're going to be able to slow down Tennessee's run with a light box? Do they think they have to commit extra people to the box? And if they do, can Tennessee work the middle of the football field in the passing game and kind of go after Ohio State that way? Ohio State is not afraid at all to play man coverage on the outside. They're very handsy. They're not afraid to grab and tug. Are they going to be able to get away with that? Is it going to be called close? How's Tennessee at winning those one-on-one battles out there on the perimeter? So there's a cat and mouse game to this thing early that's going to tell a lot about what you do. I don't think you can panic if it doesn't go exactly the way you want it to. You want it to be the script like you had at Georgia, right? Where you drive the length of the field, score a touchdown, and you're off and running. But I don't think you panic with what you do. But it is going to be a game of adjustments because I think both teams on all sides are going to have some different wrinkles and some different things that you have to adjust to. How quickly does Tennessee adjust to that? How quickly does Ohio State adjust to what Tennessee's doing? That's going to be interesting to watch early in this football game because I do think there's going to be a little bit of a filling out process because I think both teams are going to see some different looks than what they've seen on film getting ready for this game.
Yeah, again, neither one of these teams have played in 3 weeks. So, yeah, they've got a lot of time to watch, study. They've had at least, they had a week to focus on themselves more so than anything. And then you found out your opponent and you go get to work and you try to find different wrinkles and game plans and all that type of stuff to kind of throw out there. I remember I was talking to a member of the coaching staff a couple days ago, and I asked him pretty much like, I mean, is it, to steal that quote again from we used early in the week from the Water Boy, could be the last game of the year. Don't hold anything back. Like, it's one of those things where, like, if you have it, be ready, man. Like, you can see anything. Remember in the, I'm not saying this will be a big focal point, but remember in the Citrus Bowl last year, they made it a point to run Nico, design runs, scored a touchdown on one of those. I mean, hey, college football playoffs, go run that sucker if you need to, right? If you need to go score. I think Tennessee, if you got it, be ready to run it because, it's kind of do or die here. Austin Price style on the Rocky Top Round Table. Take the quarterback out of the equation. Give me one player that's got to hit for Tennessee to win.
Taking the quarterback out of the equation?
Yep.
I said it earlier in the week. I think it's those interior defensive linemen have to really, really move the pocket and really push Howard there. If I were taking a second deal, I think the Carnell Tate-Boo Carter matchup is pretty fascinating. I think both those guys are super talented. Both of them are still pretty young players. They've grown a lot. I think that's going to be a really fascinating matchup. How does Tim Banks elect to play that? It's going to be fun to watch. So that would be a couple there. And then I think on the other side, I think it's pass pro. I mean, we've all talked about, how good Nico looked in the Vanderbilt game. Well, I mean, they didn't blitz. They didn't bring anybody in the first half. I mean, it was 7-on-7. That's not going to be the way it is tonight. So how does Tennessee's pass pro hold up against an Ohio State team that's not afraid to bring a corner blitz or a nickel blitz or a safety down late? How's Tennessee's communication up front to handle those stuff to give Nico time?
Yeah, take the quarterback out of the equation. I'll take the other low hanging fruit. I'll just take Dylan Sampson. I mean, Tennessee's got to run the football, obviously, but more so than that, I said it earlier in the week as well. I think the tight ends, who are always a big part of this offense, some weeks more so than others in terms of the passing game. I think this could be a game where the tight end truly does act like a security blanket for a quarterback on the road, hostile environments, big game, going to be cold. It feels to me just like this could be a Miles Kitzelman type game. And certainly those tight ends, whether you're in 11 or 12 personnel, huge focal point in blocking, especially when you're down third and short near the goal line. I threw out the stat earlier. I don't have it in front of me again, but Ohio State, for as good as its defense is, it's not been a very good run-stopping defense in third and short. I mean, they've been really, really bad 3rd and 2 against the run and shorter. Tennessee in those situations want to run the football, and the tight ends are a huge part of that. So Sampson, Miles Kitzelman, and then on the defense side of the football, I mean, give me James Pierce. Austin Price said it earlier this week, and you'd like for a first-round draft pick to come up and have a game here today. So give me James Pierce. Give me score prediction. Our picks came out yesterday, so obviously you've seen what we have there. But how do you see this game going, Brent?
I think it's low scoring. I do. And I think the question is going to be, can Tennessee speed Ohio State up? I think it's pretty interesting when you look at the Buckeyes' last 2 games. Neither team, neither opponent nor the Buckeyes in the last 2 games have run over 60 snaps in a game. These have all been low snap, low possession, kind of grinded out type games. I don't think that's where Tennessee wants to play. Can they play, more snaps? Can they play with some tempo and be effective with that? To do that, you got to win first down. You got to win early down. That's another key stat, I think, to watch in this game tonight. But I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be hard for both teams to score in the red zone. So I think it's going to be a field goal game. And it's going to come down to who makes a play in the fourth quarter. I picked the Buckeyes because they're at home, but I think Tennessee absolutely can win this game. I actually like this matchup in a lot of ways better than Penn State, which was the other possibility here. I think there's some things that it's good on good in a lot of ways. I think when you're in that matchup, you got to play clean. And I think for Tennessee to be where they want to be in the fourth quarter of this game and to have a chance to win and advance, you can't have 10 penalties, Eric. You can't do some of those things that really knock you out of rhythm, knock you out of field goal range, that type of stuff. You got to avoid those mistakes. When you're playing an equally talented team, you can't have critical drops in situations like we saw in the Georgia game. That kind of stuff. You just can't have those mental mistakes that they played against Georgia, which ultimately cost them the football game. So for Tennessee to win, they've got to play probably their cleanest brand of football to date.
Man, like, again, as soon as this matchup was set, like, immediately I'm like, okay, well, I'll probably pick Ohio State to win. Playing at home, it's a good football team. Understand what it looked like against Michigan. It's not going to look like that again, in my opinion. Even in this other loss, it looked pretty good doing it against Oregon. Good football team, and it's got a top to bottom probably not probably about it. It's got more talent on the roster. Doesn't mean it's going to win, but it's got more talent on the roster. So initially, I'm just like, Ohio State at home. Buckeyes should win this game. When you start getting into the matchup and start studying the key matchups and personnel groupings, and of course you look at Rob's piece he put out on Thursday, there's more and more you like about this Tennessee matchup, and I agree with you. I think Tennessee matches up very well. I think there's a whole lot of good on good. Will it be good enough? Ohio State's going to win some reps on the outside for sure. Jamal McCoy and Ricky Gibson need to win their fair share as well, and I think that they will. End of the day, though, with it being cold and kind of the game that I think is going to happen, and I think Tennessee wants to run tempo, but it's about those early downs. It's about getting the first down, because if you can't run tempo unless you're winning on first down. I think Tennessee's going to be able to do that. I think the run game is going to be huge, and just like it's been all season long, I think Dylan Sampson's going to take over. I have more faith in Tennessee's ability to run the football, home, away, neutral site, whatever, than that of Ohio State. And that's kind of crazy to say because Ohio State has two really good running backs. But I think Henderson's playing a little bit banged up right now. I also think that they just don't have confidence in the offensive line in front of them. I think that's a big issue right now. But Tennessee can run block, and Tennessee's got a heck of a running back and tight ends to help them. And I think that's going to be the key focal point in this game. I like Tennessee to have a good running day on the ground. I like Tennessee to connect on some play action down the field. And I can't believe I'm saying this because initially I didn't think I would. I just kind of had that feeling. I think Tennessee, you're going to find a way. So give me Tennessee to win a field goal game, 24-21, and we're going to continue this thing on out, and we're going to go to Pasadena and talk about Tennessee in the Rose Bowl.
Well, here's the other thing. Here's the unknown about this. What is that place like tonight? What is Ohio State like tonight if Tennessee gets out of the gate?
Yeah.
If Tennessee gets out quick. Georgia didn't flinch at 10-0. Okay? They didn't. They were at home and they were good. What happens if Tennessee gets out quickly and gets a 2-score lead?
Is what Kirk Herbstreit said true? Will the
exactly,
Blue Birds come
exactly.
out?
Where's Ohio State as a team? Where's that fan base? Where's the pressure? What does it start to mount if Tennessee can get out of the blocks fast? I mean, if you've got one of those scripts to start that hits, and we've seen Josh Heupel and through the years be really good on those opening drives. You hit on a script early and kind of shock everybody a little bit. How do they react? I think it's going to be pretty fascinating to watch in this game. That is the unknown that could change the course of how this game goes tonight. What does a fast start look like? What does a fast start look like for either team? But particularly if Tennessee gets off to a fast start, how do the Buckeyes react?
We're going to be with you every single step of the way at Volquest.com and on the Journalist Quarters. We got tons of content out right now, and of course throughout the rest of the day, the cheat sheet, 10 things I think, this GameQuest podcast. You got loads and loads of notes heading into kickoff, and certainly during the game over on the Journalist Quarters. And then win, lose, or draw, we're going to have it recap for you every single step of the way, late tonight and all day tomorrow over at Volquest.com. It's been a fun season, Brent. Let's hope we can continue to talk football games that matter over Christmas next week. That'd be a whole lot of fun, and we'll see what happens, man. Tennessee and Ohio State. Couldn't do this podcast without our friends over at Premier Garage of Knoxville. That is East Tennessee's #1 provider of custom garage flooring, cabinetry, and storage solutions. You be the best Tennessee fan you can be this college football playoff season by ordering the Smokey Grey Hybrid Polymer Floor today. You can do it over at premiergarageknoxville.com/Vols. One more time, that is premiergarageknoxville.com/Vols. For Brent Hubbs, I am Eric Cain. Big thanks to Ollie Lane for joining us as well here on GameQuest. It's Tennessee versus Ohio State in the college football playoffs.